Christy, I understand you guys have had an interesting last 24 hours or so. Do you want to take me through it all?
Yeah. So I think yesterday we thought training would be cancelled. We moved training forward first of all, so we get on a nice early flight. Then we had to delay training because of thunderstorms and the rain that came through, and then got to the airport. Staff were actually on. Myself and two assistant coaches were on the later flight because we couldn't all get on the same flight. So we thought that'll be okay. It's not a problem. By the time we get to the airport 3 hours after the players, they're still there. And as we speak, the players are in Houston. So 3 staff members got to Portland last night. We had a few delays ourselves. We got to Portland last night, I think about 1 o'clock in the morning, which was, 4 a.m. And players are in Houston. So that's been an interesting 24 hours. God love them. They've been fantastic. They've just kept their head down, but I would say they're at their wits' end. What time is it right now? It's 8 o'clock here, which is 11 with you guys. So everybody's on different, the body clocks all over the place. So for example, got to bed last night at probably 1:30 and I was wide awake at 4 o'clock, which is 7 o'clock. So the players are going to go through the same thing. And then by the time the game starts, it'll be 7:30, which is 10:30, which is typically where you're shutting it down. So there's a few different things, and then just generally getting over a flight. Well, there's a time change, not just getting over a flight, getting the swelling out of your legs, getting the fatigue out of your legs. There's definitely benefits. So when we've done it in the past, we would always have 2 training sessions out here prior to the game, and we'll find out today if we're able to get one in. So it's a challenge, but you know, if there was a group of girls that you'd want to have to do this with, it's this group, because they've got their head down. I've not had one complaint. They know it's all out of our hands, but we've said from the start, if we're going to get anything, we're going to have to fight for it. And this is just another example, which is good.
You know, your travel woes aside, you know, it's a week coming off a 5-0 defeat and then going into a game at Portland, which is known as one of the toughest places to play and one of the historically toughest teams. How have you seen the team handle this, and what do you feel like necessarily you all have been able to learn over the last week or so about yourselves?
You know, one of the things about the travel, that it gives the players more time around each other. So we left Carolina and it took us 14 hours to get back from Carolina. We flew through we had to go through Orlando. So players spent time in Orlando digesting the performance, digesting everything that went on. And now they've spent, you know, we saw them at the airport yesterday, spent 7 hours in Louisville airport digesting what went on. They would have spent the last night, you know, digesting what can go on ahead of time, and same thing in Houston today. And so I think, you know, the downside, we always try to look on the bright side of it. The players come together, and that's what we asked. We talked about, listen, it's easy to be an impactful person when things are going well and performances are good, but now's the time where we really get to see who's got that strong character and has the ability to help others when we lose a game 5-0.
Okay, it does look like we have some questions. Thomas, you sent me a DM, so you go first, and then Kent, if you want to go after that, that'd be good.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hey, Christy, this is Thomas Costello of Beyond Women's Sports. How you doing?
Hey, Thomas, good. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. Not as bad travel-wise as you folks, but I'm doing okay. I had a question. Noticed this week, just through photos and videos that the team had shared, that Addison Merrick is at least on the field with the team. How is she doing in her injury recovery and her kind of timetable to get back with the club on the field?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. We're waiting on spine specialist information before we can make any type of projection or speculate even where that's going. So she's got a very delicate injury, and it's specifically with her spine, and it's something that I will not mess around with until we've got as much information as possible. We're getting second opinions, third opinions in terms of what can and cannot be done. So feel very sorry for her as she waits around and she's waiting on information. And she's been a tremendous energy around the team, and she would be a huge asset for us on the field. But we just have to sit back and wait, unfortunately, at this moment in time.
All right, thanks.
No worries, Thomas.
Hey, Christy, this is Ken with WHAS 11.
Hey, Ken, how you doing?
Good. So when you finally get your players in Portland with you guys, do you lean? Is this something that you really kind of need to lean on? You know, you have a few veterans. Do you really need to lean on them to kind of lead the younger kids? And are you guys going to have kind of a detailed plan, because obviously your window between now and game time is much shorter and obviously not ideal.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I mean, it's probably going to be a hybrid of both. You know, you've got the young piece, which is the excitement behind being in Portland and being in a big stadium, and that they can be overwhelmed by that at times. But also that naivety can bring a jovial energy, which is good, and that can impact the veterans. And the veterans can also, you know, just guide the players. You know, the reality is, from the second they land in Portland, they're going to have to dig deep. They're going to have to dig deep. They're going to have to get themselves going. They're going to have to do things a little bit in an unconventional manner. But I think that aside from that, what we will have to do is a lot more theory-based work rather than on the field in terms of walkthroughs. So we'll do quite a few different video sessions. Quite a few different video sessions, and try to prepare the players that way. And then we'll lean on the players to guide each other and push each other and really just make sure that everybody's going through best practices where possible in terms of recovery and preparation.
And Christy, if we could talk a little bit about the personnel on the field with Portland, you know, it's sort of like a where do you start situation, but you know, what have you seen from them this season? They've obviously won the Challenge Cup, and they have a handful of players I think everybody's heard of. But what do you view as the main threats or the main keys to defending them?
It's a good question. There's a few different approaches that we will look at that we've already talked to the players about. You know, there's certain players that they have that we really need to try and nullify, and we want to make sure that as a team, we force them to play in certain areas of the field. So when you look at Portland, right, you've got in the starting 11, probably 5 World Cup winners. So they're going to see more of the ball than us. That's just the reality. So our job is to figure out how we can make them have the ball in areas where they don't want it, essentially. We know where we think we know where they do want it, but it's up to us to try and direct them and manipulate them into certain areas where they're where their least important players have more of an influence. You know, so yeah, you look at Lindsay Ryan, Crystal Dunn, Sinclair. They're going to want them on the ball. They're going to want them pulling the strings. It's a diamond midfield, and then the two up front, whether it's Sophia Smith, Simone Charlie, or Morgan Weaver. They're going to push you in behind. They're going to look to use their pace or physicality to threaten you. So we're excited by it because we think it's a really good opportunity for us to learn and apply different approaches to the game. And we think if we can get our squeeze right on them, if we can get our approach right on them, we can make this a really interesting game. You know, but we're also not naive. We know that first game of the season, they turned Chicago over, who've one of the strongest teams in the league, and turned them over as though they weren't there. So we'll definitely not take that approach, but we're going to take the approach where we definitely respect them. We know what they're capable of, and we know what we're capable of too, and we want to maximize our strengths.
Christy, this is Andrew Chernoff with WLKY. Do you like how the team has responded in the last week of training since that North Carolina game?
Absolutely. Yeah. Very proud of them. You know, it's not easy. It's easy to respond when you win a game. It's easy to respond when things are going well. And I talked to, you know, I don't ever want to hear about, you knew that was going to happen. You knew that was going to come. Look where the team is. It's a young team. It's an expansion team. We knew it would happen. We're just not going to stand for that. We understand that there will be challenges, and the team knows that. But we also feel really good internally about the steps that we're taking to prepare for each game and ultimately progress throughout the season. So the energy has been fantastic. The players that have stepped up and made themselves be seen or heard or felt on the field in practices have been fantastic. So we're really pleased, and we're hopeful that it's something that we can build upon rather than continually reflect back on and think, oh my goodness, what just happened.
Michael, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So you're going to start to have a few more players available for selection, maybe even starting this weekend, but surely after the international break. So I didn't know if any of the existing players are kind of looking over their shoulder, if anybody's putting in any extra effort in practice to make sure they get seen, because I know your selection decisions are getting ready to become a whole lot harder.
I hope so. I really hope so. I think at the end of the day, what we've always talked about within the team is the old cliche: you got to always beat yourself, right? You got to beat yourself. No, you got to beat the person next to you. There's no point if you can beat yourself and still not be good enough. It's not enough. So we need more competition. We need to make sure that you're beating the person that's trying to take your job, whether that's in the NWSL, whether that's on the national stage. You have to beat the person that's trying to do your job. So bringing in competition, it allows us, one, to push people in training and bring up the intensity there, but it also allows us to have more of a rotation as well. People are very familiar with our starting 11. We're very physically demanding of them within games, and we need to be able to bring in more depth and allow a rotation there. So we're excited by that. We've got a few coming back from injury too, which is great. So things are moving in the right direction, and the competition should be good.